Thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video. For those of you guys that have been watching the channel for a while, you guys know that I love shooting 35mm. This lens basically never leaves my camera. I think it looks absolutely amazing. It shows so much of the scene, but it also omits certain things from the scene. And in my opinion, it's just the best focal length. You guys can fight me on that for sure. But recently I realized that I've been getting pretty comfortable with this lens or with this focal length. And that's not really a bad thing. I think it's great to become really comfortable with a specific focal length. And that's one of the beauties of shooting with prime lenses. But I've been getting a little bit too comfortable in the sense that I don't really branch out anymore. I pretty much only shoot 35mm and above. And I wanted to challenge myself a little bit more. So recently, me and my friend Jord went out to the Badung market here in Bali in the heart of Denpasar. This place is absolutely pumping with activity. There's so much going on. And in order to challenge myself, I decided to go out armed with only one lens, and that is the 24mm f1.4. Now the actual lens, the Sony lens, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about focal length here, specifically 24mm. In my experiences shooting 24mm that day, as well as this week in general, I've just been kind of going out and shooting and experimenting with this wider angle lens. So in this video, I want to talk about why I found it so incredibly difficult to shoot with this lens, and also give you guys tips for shooting with a wide angle lens like this, and talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of shooting with a wide angle lens, whether it's 24mm or 16mm or even 28mm. So like I said in the beginning of this video, I love shooting 35mm. I think it's just a really balanced focal length. I can fit so much into the frame, but it's also not so wide that I have to fit everything into the frame. And when you're shooting with a 24mm lens, well, now you no longer have the luxury of omitting certain things from your frame like you can do with a 35mm or a 50mm lens. 24mm is pretty damn wide. And when I was out shooting at the market and just shooting throughout this week, one of the things that I noticed is I really do gravitate towards kind of pretty pictures. And what I mean by that is I like to omit certain things from my compositions to keep my compositions nice and clean and organized and balanced. And 35mm really allows me to do that. But when you start going wider than that, it becomes very difficult to hide certain things from your frame. And I noticed this especially when I was in the market, because there was so much going on in this market. This place is absolutely incredible. And if you guys do come to Bali, I highly recommend going to this market. There is so much going on at this market, and the people there are so incredibly kind, and they are so stoked to get their picture taken. I don't think I've been anywhere else in the world where the local people are just stoked to see you when you're out shooting, and they want to be in your pictures, they want to chat with you. And that's one of the things that I really love the most about living here in Bali. But I digress. And shooting at this market with a wide angle lens like this, there was just so much going on around me, and pretty much everywhere I turned, unless I was super close to my subject, there was just so much going on in the scene, and I really could not simplify my compositions in a way that I really wanted to. I really like to have a very clear subject and kind of having the rest of the frame tell the story of that particular subject and really give that subject context. So I found it really difficult to do that in this market, but that's also one of the reasons why a 24mm lens is so incredibly powerful, is because you can show so much of that scene and you can give so much context to your subject in that photo. And I realized that very quickly while I was out shooting. I was able to capture such a wide field of view with these photos that I could tell a much more compelling and interesting story about the person or the thing or the subject that I was photographing. And if you look at some of the most famous street or documentary photographers, a lot of them are shooting with quite wide angle lenses like this because they can show so much of that scene. And you can also create these really advanced and dynamic compositions that is much harder to do when you're shooting with a zoomed in lens like 50mm or 85mm. And I think that's where the 24mm lens really shines, because you can capture multiple different layers in your scene. And I'm going to show you guys some photos here in a second where we have multiple subjects and they're all kind of doing their own thing, but they're all within the frame and they all help tell this cohesive story. Now, the problem with this is it's incredibly difficult to get right. You have to be super patient. And I realized how lazy I've gotten shooting with a 35mm lens, because when I don't like something, I'll just omit it from the frame. But with a wide angle lens, you can't escape it. You have to figure out how you can incorporate it into your composition, or really force yourself to move into a perspective where you can omit it, but it becomes much more difficult. But I want to take a closer look at some of the photos that I shot at that market and walk you guys through my thoughts on those compositions and why I think some of them really work and why I think some of them kind of fell short a little bit. But before we do so, I want to tell you guys about the sponsor of today's video, and that is Skillshare. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard of Skillshare by this point because they are absolute legends in the online teaching community. But if you haven't heard of them, Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with a massive range of topics ranging from illustration, graphic design, music, marketing, productivity, and of course, photography. And I actually just launched a brand new course on Skillshare called Starting Your Creative Business from Scratch, the Foundations. And in this class, I cover pretty much all the things that you need to do to get your creative business off the ground. Whether you're a photographer, a videographer, an artist, a graphic designer, this course was designed to give you all the most practical knowledge that you need when you're first starting out your business in order to get it off the ground. Now, I've also shared a ton of other classes on Skillshare as well, ranging from photography to social media. And I pretty much have a class for everything. And if I don't, then one of the other thousands of teachers on the platform certainly will. But whatever skill you choose to explore, Skillshare has designed custom learning paths with a list of curated courses that build upon each other and help you go from beginner to advanced in an easy to understand way. Like this learning path about the introduction to DSLR photography, which starts you off with the fundamentals of how to use your camera before moving you on to more practical photography courses, which get you outside shooting and reinforcing all the principles that you've learned. Now, Skillshare has been an amazing platform for me to both teach and learn on over the years. And if you're ready to invest in yourself and make strides towards your creative goals or your passion project this year, then Skillshare is the best place to do that. Now, the first 500 people to use my link in the description will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. And with that free trial, you'll be able to check out my new class on starting a creative business from scratch. And once again, you'll also get access to the thousands of other high quality classes on Skillshare as well. Thank you so much, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to click the link down in the description. Now let's get back to it. But now I want to take a closer look at some of the photos that I shot out there at the market and look at the compositions and talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of shooting at 24mm. Now, the first image here, I absolutely love this photo. And earlier on, I mentioned that one of the beauties of shooting with a 24mm lens is you can capture layers in the scene. You can capture so much. And this is a prime example of capturing layers in the scene here. We have these 3 elderly gentlemen, or the guy in the back's not elderly, but the guy in the front certainly is. And I love that we just have so much going on throughout the frame, and our eyes just kind of navigate from this main subject here in the front all the way to the dude just chilling in the back. These guys were absolute legends. They were so dope. They were so chill. They just wanted to get their picture taken, and the guy laying down in the back just couldn't care less. It was so funny. He was posing. He was just vibing. So I love this shot because we have this old man in the foreground looking off into the right of the frame, and he just looks so stoic and interesting. And then we have the 2 guys in the back, and there's just a lot to look at in the composition. Now, is this the most powerful composition in the world? No, but it's an interesting shot, and I think that's why I like it so much. Now, these guys actually, this was a toilet for the market. So the people here, they ran the toilet. That was their business. It was really interesting to see them. And I shot a bunch of photos of the man on the right and his wife, who was deaf. I think it was his wife or his sister. They were super nice. But I also want to take a look at these photos here of this little boy in the market. And I think these are some of my favorite photos of the day. These and some of the other photos I'm going to show you here pretty soon. But I love this shot so much because we see this little boy, and he's very clearly the main subject here. And I think I did a good job of making it very clear that he's the main subject because we can't see the eyes or the faces of the other people in this composition. But the little boy is right in the middle. He's very easy to see. And because we're shooting at 24, we can see so much of the frame around him. It provides so much context as to what this kid's doing, who he is, and just telling this really comprehensive story of like being at the market. He had to go with his mom, and Jord actually helped him get the hat. It was stuck on his hand. It was really cute, and he was kind of throwing a little bit of a fit, and Jord kind of went down and helped him out. And then I shot a bunch of cool photos of him, and this one's probably my favorite because he's looking into the frame. We can see, you know, his eyes, we can see his hands, the hat, but there's a bunch of other ones that are really cool as well, especially this one here. Absolutely love this frame. And same idea why, you know, it provides context. We can see so much of the scene there. I do wish that I included his hand. It's killing me that I missed that in this composition, but I still think it's a really cool shot there. But I would say that those compositions are kind of busy, even still, even though our subject is pretty clear, they're still pretty busy. But I did shoot some photos which are more in line with my style, which is where I like to eliminate certain things from my compositions so they're not distracting and kind of dominating the scene, and using that negative space to kind of enhance the story and simplify the scene. And this is a prime example of that. This is another little boy that was absolutely stoked to get his picture taken. His mom was like telling him how to pose. They were such a vibe. This kid was so cool, and I shot a ton of photos of this kid, but this one stands out to me the most. I love it so much because we have all that negative space that allows us to focus on the main subject, which is this little boy here. The right side of the frame is basically devoid of anything. It's just this green tarp. And then we have the little boy in the middle with the eye contact. We can see his hands. And also, because he's pulling that cover, it's kind of creating a nice diagonal line of interest. And then also we can see back into the frame. So we still have a sense of depth here, which is something that I'm always looking for in my photos, is to capture a sense of depth. And you guys would know that if you watched my video called "This is Why Your Photos Are Boring." Depth is super important. So I love that we have that in this scene. Now, this composition could have more layers. And perhaps if I was patient, I could have captured somebody walking by in the background. I think I did actually capture a few where we have the shadow of a person, but it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on. But I love this photo, and it shows that we can simplify the scene a little bit if we do position ourselves in the right perspective like I did here. Now here's another example where I tried to simplify the scene a little bit, and I think I did an okay job. It could be better because the things that I'm using in the foreground to help simplify that scene are actually a little bit distracting, specifically the big basket on the left. I think it really works because we can see this guy's face. It's very clear that he's the main subject. And I do like that I use those foreground elements to kind of keep the focus on him and give us a sense of depth in the photo, but it still could be a cleaner shot. And like I said before, I had a hard time capturing these clean compositions, but I did start to embrace that a little bit more as I was shooting, and just started to jump into the mix and try and capture a bunch of different things in the composition. And this is another photo that I really love from the shoot. And this is a good example of layers, where we have the focus is on the hands on the wheel, but we can see the face of the driver in the mirror. I love that. That's what shooting with a wide angle lens is all about, is to capture these really creative, unique compositions like this. It would be cool if we had a more compelling subject in the right back side of the frame, but still a super cool photo, and I love how this one came out. But I think it's important to note that this isn't the style of photography that I usually like to shoot. I shoot a lot of street photography, but it's not so often focused on people. It's usually just focused on scenes, on aesthetics. I look for light, I look for color, I look for shapes and composition. And if there's a person in it, that's great. But oftentimes there's not people in my compositions. And shooting with this 24mm lens, I quickly realized that I was focusing on the people a lot more and incorporating them into my compositions in a way that kind of helped tell this more compelling story. And this is a really good example of that. We went into this little shop, and this dude just had a bunch of limes in baskets that were kind of strewn throughout the composition. And I love this shot because we can see so much in the scene. It's very clear that the main subject here is the man, but we also have this like super cool retro TV, as well as this really quirky painting on the left and the boxes below it. And then we also have just all these different baskets of limes strewn throughout the room that I think add a lot of compositional interest. But I shot a lot of wide angle photos like this that are meant to show the scene as a whole. And some of them are fairly clean and some of them are not. This is probably a better example of a photo that I would typically shoot, which is kind of a vibey little scene. We just have some really nice light here, really emphasizing the colors and the tones and the mood and the vibes of the photo. This is probably much more my style, but I'm glad that I branched out a little bit. I think I got some really cool photos. And just to show you guys a few more of my favorites, this one, I love it so much. And I think the 24mm really shines here because we can see so much of the scene around the guy. This composition is a little bit messy. It's probably a little bit too messy for my liking, but I still think it's a beautiful photo. I love how the colors came out. I love that he's doing something. We can see his hands, which are very emotional. We can just see so much of the scene around the main subject in this photo. I love this one so much. And the other one is probably one of my favorite photos of the day. This is these two dudes that just got a massive delivery of oranges, and we're chatting with them. They're like, come inside, take some pictures. And I shot this one, and I think it really just works. The composition works. I like that I didn't include their faces, but instead just their legs and all of these different oranges, which create this really interesting composition in the scene. And I just think it works so well. I love this photo so much. But shooting with this lens was definitely interesting. I did find it incredibly difficult, and I think it takes a lot of skill to shoot with a wide angle lens like this and get photos that you're really happy with. And you know, I do love 35 millimeters. I think it will always be my favorite focal length, but it was really interesting to shoot with a wide angle lens like this and have to face all the different challenges that come with that. Now, I would love to shoot with the 28. I think that's a good middle ground between 24 and 35. And if you guys have a good recommendation on a 28 millimeter lens, let me know. I do think 24 is a little bit too wide for my liking, and I think I'll always stick and love 35 millimeters because I do love kind of those simple compositions. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know which photo from this video was your favorite. Let me know your favorite focal length as well. I do want to make a video on the 35 millimeter lens here pretty soon because I love it so much. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. And also, all the photos in this video were edited with my free preset pack. I'll put a link down in the description. You guys can check that out. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.